to the Hoosier Football Tailgate here on the On3 Network, as well as the Hoosier.com. I'm the Coach Shannon Griffith. Thanks for joining us here this evening on a nice, should I say, spring evening in the state of Indiana. And it looks like it's going to shape up to be a really nice Mother's Day weekend. And happy Mother's Day to all those moms out there. They are the ones that got our kids to practice, in some cases to recitals, as my mom used to drag me off to PAL football practice when I didn't want to go. And so we owe a lot to the moms out there that may be listening or tuning in to the Hoosier Tailgate. We appreciate you and appreciate you joining us here this evening. Going to talk a little bit here about what's kind of been going on of late with some of the recruiting stuff and things of that nature. We're going to talk with Zach Browning, who's going to have a lot of information that he has covered extensively on the Hoosier.com, and making sure that you get a chance to get over there to the Hoosier.com and get your subscription. Remember, $1 for the first month, and then 50% off for the first year for the Hoosier.com, as well as On3 Sports. But we're going to talk to him in a little bit as we get into it here. But he has done a great job of staying on top of everything on the recruiting front for the Hoosier.com. And I really appreciate it as well, just from the standpoint as we try to coordinate with those guys that are going to potentially committing, and I'm trying to locate video of those young men and trying to make sure that we've got the adequate coverage for those kids, just like Trevor Gibbs, of Crown Point High School, the most recent commit. He was a great pickup for Indiana, very versatile athlete, both as a tight end and a linebacker. If you look at him on tape, man, he excites you because of his relentlessness of playing the positions that he plays. He plays very hard. His blocking ability is outstanding. And even at linebacker, his sense of for the ball is way up there in terms of development. And he's a kid that he could find his way sneaking in his first year and maybe providing some help. And tight end wise, we'll talk a little bit about this with Zach, but he's a kid that can spread out, put his hand on the ground, be that wide receiver or be that extra back in the backfield, kind of a Zach Horton type. And if you can develop into that, the Hoosiers have found themselves another weapon to really put into this offense. And I do think he'll be a good one to be a potential guy that could have an immediate impact for Indiana. One other thing with that is that Indiana is now up to 8 commitments overall on the 26 class. There are potential some more kids maybe getting ready to make that commitment. We'll ask Zach about that as well. As far as the portal is concerned, I do think they are pretty much done with it, unless the linebacker they've been talking with from Rutgers, I believe, would happen to fall in their lap. He's a young man that it would be hard to say no to if he decided that he wanted to be a part of the Indiana Hoosiers. So that one, for the most part, I would say is complete. Don't look for him to add any more unless that linebacker would happen to pop into the fray of it here in the next coming days and such, as we start approaching the month of May and June. And for Indiana right now, you'll see coaches that are predominantly out on the road for their spring recruiting time period. It gives them a chance to touch base with the kids that aren't not here, and though from this recruiting class that will be joining them. Well, I've already joined them after they graduate here on campus to get started in the summer, and making sure they're all set and ready to go. Talking potential recruits for the 26 class and eyeballing some kids for the 27, 28 classes. A lot of high schools throughout the state of Indiana and all over the country will have specific days, what they call college show days. And they'll put on a, kind of like a mini combine for the coaches that are there. And you'll get to see kids, run around and do things, which is an important facet of recruiting because, again, tape can only show you so much as you got to get that feel for a kid in person on the field, how he competes, things of that magnitude. And they'll have these type of days that are available to the coaches that will come in and watch them and get a chance to put their eyes on them physically. And then, of course, extend offers if that kid so deserves to be one. And again, like I said, Indiana's very in good shape with the 26 class, and you're starting to see offers roll out to the 27 class. Those are the sophomores going to be juniors, and it's hard to believe that they're already into that mode. And I've even seen some 28 class kids getting offered by Indiana, which those are guys that are true freshmen that are playing at the varsity level. And a lot of those kids are what we call no doubters. And, there's not a lot, but again, they're out there. They're looking at those kids on the road and trying to get a feel for interest in Indiana and such. So the month of May is pretty much that and all as far as on campus goes. Outside of workouts, I'm sure Coach Signetti is having his spring interviews with the guys that are on campus and getting a feel for all those guys after spring practice and allowing them to ask questions or in some cases be told what their how they view them moving forward going into the fall camp or what a kid needs to improve upon. So those are also important too for not only the coaches, but the kids. We talked about spring ball being a time of evaluation and each position coach having to make sure that the head coach has a breakdown of the kids that are in his position group and how they, where do they fall in line as it pertains to their depth and such, and what are some things they need to improve upon and for them to move up. So that is occurring right now on top of that. But the biggest thing, and one thing that we're going to do tonight and going to bring him in here is get Zach in here to talk about Indiana and this recruiting that is occurring right now. Zach, how you doing? Can you hear me okay?
I got you. You got me?
Perfectly. So
Awesome.
I think we've got this video stuff figured out right now. That's the best part. Well, I was just talking about the month of May being a big recruiting month for the coaches on the road. And while we're getting some of the 26 kids kind of committed already, and we're seeing a lot of kids in the 27 class already getting offered. And those are guys that played as true sophomores that are going to be juniors this coming season. Indiana has not held back as it pertains to getting their names out in front of people that they think are pretty darn good football players. But more importantly, this 26 class with 8 commits now is right now, you would have to say, is shaping up to be a pretty darn good one.
Yeah, On3 has this 2026 class for Indiana right now, currently at 40th in the country, which is up 13 spots from a couple of weeks ago. 40th in the country, 12th in the Big Ten. Obviously, the Big Ten, a lot of competition in there when you're recruiting. But this is a good recruiting class so far. Still much more room to grow as well. So far, 2 top 300 recruits in this class. You look at Henry Olinger, who is an athlete, probably going to play linebacker at IU. He's a number 106 overall ranked recruit in the country, according to On3. And then Casimir Hicks, the number 1 rated recruit in the state of Indiana, a defensive back rated number 272 in the country. So there's a solid mix of top-end talent so far in this class with some depth as well. But this class, the 2026 class, is only going to continue to grow for Indiana over the next coming weeks and months.
Yeah, there's no question that what they've been able to do thus far in the state of Indiana is being able to keep homegrown talent at home, even though those kids are being actively recruited by other Big Ten schools and other schools that may be out of state. And in years past, that's not been something that has been all that well for Indiana. Now that they've had a great year, went to the playoffs and such, it's kind of put them in a position to try to keep these kids at home. We can talk a little bit about Casimir Hicks, the cornerback out of Decatur Central. I was thoroughly impressed with him as a two-way athlete again. A lot of these guys are two-way players from bigger schools, that's not something you see all too much at the 5A, 6A level football-wise in Indiana. But Casimir he's a good running back. He's a good wide receiver. He really impressed me of just his overall athleticism and ball skills. I thought he had really good ball skills on both sides of the ball and has the speed to really go along with that, with those the handsets and such. But kind of give me your breakdown or what you think of Casimir Hicks and this potential being the number one recruit out of Indiana.
Yeah, like you said, I think Hicks is a great guy. Obviously, the number one ranked recruit in the state of Indiana. So that obviously comes with some expectations there. The number 38 ranked cornerback in the country. And I, too, like his ability. He's not the biggest, 5'11", 160. And I wanted to ask you, does he remind you a little bit at all of D'Angelo Pons? Because he's a little undersized at cornerback, 5'11", 160, but he's fast, he fights, he's physical. He doesn't play that size. He plays much bigger than he is, which reminds me of D'Angelo Pons. I was going to ask you if you see that as well, because when I watch Casimir Hicks, it screams D'Angelo Pons to me. A smaller cornerback, but physical, great ball skills, great man, great zone, everything like that.
Yeah. Yes, and I do believe that's pretty spot on. He does give you that, that appearance that, this could be another D'Angelo in terms of what we see on film of him. And again, like you said, he's not the biggest. He's only about 160. So now going into his senior year, what you want to see a kid like him do is add some pounds. You want to see him get bigger, adding muscle weight, and he's put on another 10, 15 pounds going into this senior season. And then if he can do that and maintain what we've seen thus far, which I don't think is going to be an issue, then I do think Indiana's picked up a pretty darn good football player. But you're right. He's a kid that does remind me of D'Angelo. On3 does have him right now out of their national four. They've got him as a 4-star on3. And overall, he's a 3-star, very close to being a 4-star. So it's flip a coin there. But yes, definitely think that they bring he brings that to the table, being a guy that, fits into Brian Haynes' scheme. He's a guy that likes to play a lot of man coverage. In order to do that, you got to have corners that you can put out on an island and trust that they're going to shut people down. And he would fit that mentality of what Bryant likes to do defensively. So it's not surprising we're seeing kids like that. And you could almost say the same things about the Timmons kid as well, who's also a cornerback, and he is out of Pine Ridge, Richland, Pittsburgh area kid. So he's out of Cincinnati's backyard. Pittsburgh football, high school football is legendary in its own right. It's a very tough area for high school football in that regard. And here's a kid that's coming right out of Pittsburgh and committed. And again, here's another kid, 5'10", 175, but fits that same blueprint of what you'd like to see in a corner.
Yeah, and I think both of these two guys, when you look at Timmons and you look at Hicks, it's just, we know Kirsten that he talks about liking the production. He preaches production over potential, but these guys are guys that have both. You look at what Hicks has done at Decatur Central. You look at what Timmons has done at the high school level. They have the production, they have the numbers, but they also have potential. Casimir Hicks has plenty of room, as you mentioned, to grow into that body. He's got a good frame, not the biggest guy as we talked about, but he's got long arms. He's got plenty of room to grow into that frame. And I see the same situation with Timmons as well. I mean, Timmons, you look at the numbers. Of course, it's high school, so you take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, but he had 4 interceptions, 10 passes defended. He's shown that he can play the ball. He's shown his ball skills. He's physical. But what stands out to me is the tackling ability, the open field tackling ability. If he does give up a catch, it's not typically a lot of yards after the catch. He doesn't allow a lot of broken tackles. This past season, this past fall, Timmons forced 3 fumbles from the cornerback spot. That's not something you see every day from the cornerback spot. So I think both Timmons and Hicks, they offer what you need and what Indiana and what Brian Haynes are looking for out of the cornerback. You need somebody physical, as you said. You want somebody that can go play on an island, be physical, match up against the Ohio States, the Michigans of the world, the Penn States of the world out wide. And I think both Hicks and Timmons do that from not only an ability standpoint, from their ball skills, but also a physicality standpoint. And that really stands out with Timmons. Timmons, you watch him play, he plays with a lot of physicality. He plays with a lot of force. It always looks like he is the aggressor out there when whether it's making a play on a ball or whether it's making a tackle in open space. But I really like the addition of Timmons as well.
Talking with Zach Browning from the Hoosier.com, who does a great job covering Indiana as football and their recruiting pages as well. You could say that for the most part, out of this 8-man commitment list so far, it has a lot of defensive flavor to it. And one thing that coaches have to do is they have to project out 2 to 3 years on what their needs are going to be, because of you don't know who may leave, may go to the NFL after next year, and things of that magnitude. So the flavor has really been defensive kids thus far, with the exception of Trevor Gibbs, who committed yesterday. But another kid in state, Blake Smith, out of Franklin Community, not too far from Bloomington, 6'3", 275. And boy, this kid reminds me of Carpenter very much on film, and just the way he plays, probably a little quicker, but he has that mindset, and the way he plays, it reminds me of Carpenter quite a bit.
Yeah, and Smith is another guy, top 15 in the class in the state of Indiana, ranked 11th according to the On3 industry ranking. And Smith is a legacy guy. This is one of those recruitments where you can't lose it. If you're Indiana, you have to be able to win the guys that have an Indiana connection. You have to be able to win these types of battles. And of course, Smith's grandpa played for Lee Corso and was a team captain back in the day at IU. His grandma went to IU as well. And so he talked about just feeling that Coach Sig was going in the right direction with this program. And he said he wanted to be a part of that, and also helped that, his grandparents went here to IU as well. But you look at the teams Indiana beat out, the Michigan States of the world, the Wisconsins of the world. Those are teams and schools that have traditionally dominated Indiana. Those are teams that have come into the state of Indiana and plucked out whoever they've liked from the state and taken them for their own. But under Curt Cignetti, we haven't really seen that. We've seen Indiana kind of controlling the state. And I think that's really the biggest takeaway so far from the 2026 class right now. If you look at the top 10, if you go to On3 and look at the top 10 ranked players in the state of Indiana, a lot of them either are committed to Indiana or are probably going to commit to Indiana, or at least have Indiana in their top 2 or 3. And if they aren't going to Indiana, they're going to big-time schools like Wisconsin. If maybe they have a family connection to another school. But Indiana's winning their state. And again, this is a commitment in Smith, who he has the legacy, he has the family connection. So this is kind of just a slam dunk. You can't lose it, but it's a good sign that Indiana isn't losing that type of recruitment. And again, I like Smith. He does remind me of James Carpenter. He's got a lot of athleticism to him. And again, he's a guy that can get bigger. We haven't even talked about Derek Owings, who just got the bag from Indiana, the strength and conditioning coordinator, who just got a new job, or new contract,
new contract,
after USC
almost $1 million.
After USC came in and tried to poach them. But we've heard all along about, whether it's the players, whether it's Coach Cignetti, there's like a Derek Owings extra 10 pounds of muscle that he adds to your frame when you come here to Bloomington, when you come here to IU and are under his programs and whatnot. So I think that's what you kind of have to look at this class. You look at this class, maybe they aren't the most physically gifted class. I mean, 6'3", 280 is pretty big for a high school kid. Don't get me wrong, but you project that again 1-2 years down the line. By the time Smith is a sophomore here at IU, you're looking at 6'3", 6'4", 300 plus pounds easily, and that's athletic muscle. So I think that's what you have to take into account as well. But I do like the addition of Smith on the defensive line. We've seen the importance of the defensive line and how Indiana's kind of had to reload via the portal so far this offseason along the defensive line. Smith should hopefully help smooth that transition from year to year with the high school class coming in.
Yeah, no question there. And, we've talked about the foundational aspects of Indiana's recruiting, and you can see the blueprint that, Coach Signetti has implemented, not just with the transfer portal, but also with kids coming out of the high school ranks and plugging them into the positions that they think they're going to need so that they can not rely on the portal as much as time goes on, or at least that would be the plan. But you can see that being developed right now. Again, if you're in the chat, by all means, if you got a question, please ask away with Zach or I here. Yes, definitely there, Coach Allen, is that, Sig's idea of recruiting starts in this backyard, and Indiana high school football has really seen a resurgence in the number of kids that have gone on to the Power 4 schools. Up where I'm here at in Northeast Indiana, they had several kids a year ago that were P4 kids. One kid went to Miami of Florida. So again, these are the cities that Indiana has to have a flag planted firmly in the ground that they can go and keep kids kids here. I mean, right now, the Jaquan's Guilford kid out of Northrop High School up here in Fort Wayne, a very prominent receiver, multiple offers. As I understand right now, it's between Indiana and Ohio State that his decision is going to come down to. These are the battles that get you from mediocrity to being in the top half of the Big Ten and enable you to be a contender year in, year out. So those are the things that Indiana has to keep on doing. Another defensive flavor kid, get your input on as well is Jacob Savage out of Union, Kentucky, 6'1", 220. Boy, this kid reminded me on tape a lot of Aiden Fisher and just the way he played. There's a lot of similarities into how this kid plays the game that would be Aiden Fisher-esque in terms of his toughness, his ability to read and react and go make plays in space. That's what this kid can do for Indiana. But go ahead and get your take on Mr. Savage there out of Union, Kentucky.
I would agree with you. Savage is one of those guys. He's not the Jalen Walker type. He's not going to be the fastest player on the defensive side of the ball. He's probably not going to be the strongest player on the defensive side of the ball. But for whatever reason, when you put on his tape and you watch him play, he's always in the right spot, or at least he's getting somebody else into the right spot. He's the leader of that defense where he is at Union and Union City. He was Mr. Kentucky this past season in the state of Kentucky. So he's got the physical gifts, yes, but he's not the fastest. He's not the strongest, but he just gets guys and gets himself in the right positions, and that's exactly what you see from a guy like Aiden Fisher. And Savage is a guy who really embodies and is an example of what Curt Signetti has come in and done for Indiana. And because when I talked to Savage in April, before he had committed, he had Indiana in his top 3, top 4, whatever. But before he committed back in April, it was after a visit. Savage told me that it was the winning culture and the conversations that he's had with Coach Signetti. And I think that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest buzzword when you talk to these recruits, whether they're committed, whether they're not, whether they've just received an offer. It's all about the culture. Guys come in. They come to watch a spring practice. It's strict. It's to the point. Curt Signetti gets in, gets out, and there's a culture. You can sense it. You can feel it when you go to a spring practice, and it's the same for the recruits. Right. And I think Savage is another example of that. He raved about Indiana's culture because obviously Savage was a guy that wasn't necessarily on Indiana's radar before Signetti got there. He's 2026 class. So Signetti came in, quickly established the culture, and it's something that all of these recruits, Savage included, have really raved about since Kurt Signetti's come in. But I do see the Aiden Fisher similarities with Jacob Savage.
Yeah, no question. And again, it's a kid that you went to Kentucky and beat the likes of UK and U of L for the rights to get that kid in your program. And that's a big pickup for them. And I think he's a kid that will make his mark at some point in time in Indiana's lineup just because the way he plays the game. Defensive line again, the Rodney White kid out of Concordia Prep out in Maryland, out of the Townsend, Maryland area. You know, here's a kid, 6'1", 280. Again, little green, but there's a ton of upside.
Yeah, and this is kind of we've talked a lot about Indiana controlling the state and controlling and winning the state of Indiana. But White's one of those examples. Obviously, he's not from Indiana. He's from Maryland. But Indiana still landed him. And I think that shows where this class can really, and potentially recruiting can really take off for Indiana over the coming years as Signetti continues to build his foundation. You lock down the state first off. He's got the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania connections. That's obvious as well. So you lock down those two areas, and then you can kind of branch out. Obviously, Maryland not too far from Pittsburgh and not too far from Pennsylvania. But what stood out to me about White was when he committed, he told On3 that Indiana genuinely felt like home. And that's something that is kind of, I mean, Bloomington and Townsend, Maryland. I've never been to Townsend, Maryland, but I can imagine that it's probably not too similar with Bloomington, Indiana. But again, it goes back to that culture that Kurt Signetty is building. 6'3", 295. This is a big guy in Rodney White. He's more of the CJ West type of build than the James Carpenter type of build from that perspective. But again, White is kind of that example of Indiana branching out and showing, yes, we can win the state if we're Indiana. We can recruit in Kurt Signetti's backyard and where a lot of the assistants are from up in Pennsylvania, up in Pittsburgh. But we can also branch out a bit. And that's, I think, something that you see with the commitment of a guy like White from Maryland, who, again, I doubt Maryland and Bloomington. I doubt Townsend, Maryland is that similar to Bloomington, but it just shows how this culture is not just an Indiana thing. It's not just the kids in the state of Indiana that hear about IU all the time from their high school coaches or from their classmates who are probably going to go to IU or Purdue or Ball State or one of those schools. It's kids out of state that haven't grown up watching Indiana football or haven't grown up hearing about Indiana athletics and stuff like that. This is the type of kid in Rodney White that is an example of Indiana reaching out, going a little bit outside their comfort zone and really showing that, hey, this is a movement at Indiana. This is a cultural movement that we're kind of undertaking, and I think this is an example of that.
Yeah, David Martin said, I think these kids also like how everything is so organized. Yeah, David, I think that's correct, and I think Zach even alluded to that a little bit earlier about the cultural aspect of things and how things are run. The kids it's a tangible thing that they can see, and they don't see it being any BS. It's very there. It's in front of them. They can define it. They can be a part of it. And I think that's the way a kid comes away feeling. And outside of that, Bloomington has its own ability of selling itself. Getting a kid on campus, even with mom and dad, they will come with one impression of Bloomington and Indiana University, and they will leave with a total different mindset than they did when they first arrived, in a positive light. So there's no question about the way that Sig and his coaches have been recruiting thus far on the recruiting trail. Another big time recruit taken right out of the state of Ohio, Mr. Henry Ollinger, linebacker, running back, 4-star, 6'1", 210, and he's another lightning rod as a football player. He could be a running back at this level, but most teams are recruiting him as a running back. He's committed to Indiana. He is a 4-star, but Ohio State has a tendency to be lurking around. If you didn't see his Twitter feed last week where he had Brian Hartline and him in a picture together. And I noticed that I think today there's a picture up of Henry and Coach Haynes now pinned to his profile. So I don't think that was a little intentional of Mr. Haynes going over to talk to his linebacker, because they know that they're still up against a an Ohio State aspect of things. So Henry Olinger, again, athlete, definitely. Everything that I have garnered on the kid, both on and off the field, is top notch. I mean, a lot of people have talked about his leadership qualities and the way he handles and conducts himself in and out of the classroom. On the field, he's another kid that just finds a way to make plays.
And this is a big, big win for Indiana. Again, this isn't an Indiana kid. This is a guy from Columbus, from Ohio State's backyard. This is a top ranked number 106 overall in the entire 2026 class, according to On3. So this is not like a guy that's not good enough for Ohio State. This guy is plenty good enough for Ohio State. Indiana still went into the Buckeyes' backyard and scooped him up. Again, for now, obviously, in this day and age of high school recruiting, everything is fluid. But still, this is a big, big win for Indiana. And I think what impressed me, again, you mentioned it, about Olinger is his commitment to not only developing on the field. Obviously, this is a guy with NFL aspirations. He's got that type of talent coming out of high school, but it's the off the field stuff, the developing as a person as well. That's what he told Steve Wiltfong of On3 when he committed to Indiana. He said that I think Indiana is the best place for me to develop as a player and as a person under Coach Bryant Haynes. And I think that's what this Indiana coaching staff brings. When you look at Kurt Cignetti, you look at Bryant Haynes, Mike Shanahan, the top three staffers for Indiana. Yes, they're great X's and O's guys, but they're also great people. They're great at developing these young kids and these guys into young men. And we've heard it all from the Indiana players themselves. A lot of the recruits that I've talked to have said things along those lines as well. But Olinger is a beast. This is a four-star guy, nearly a top 100 recruit. And again, right from Ohio State's backyard, he'll probably play linebacker when he gets to campus at IU. But 6'1", 210, blazing speed as well. There's not much that this guy can't do. And again, this is another big win over some big schools as well. Iowa was in on Olinger, so was Miami, Virginia, Rutgers, Boston College. This was a big recruiting win, and this was kind of a symbol and a signal to some of the teams around the Big Ten, around the country, like Indiana is the real deal. This is one of the higher ranked recruits Indiana's got in some time from the surrounding areas as well. This is a big, big win Olinger was for Indiana.
Yeah, no question. And again, talking with Zach Browning from the Hoosier.com. And just a reminder, if you're a part and have a subscription to the Hoosier.com, you can find all my video breakdowns of all of these commitments there on the site if you're a member, which means you got to go get that membership for $1 for the first month and then 50% off for the first year. So after we're done here this evening, get over there and get your subscriptions to some of the best coverage of Indiana athletics as well as football from the Hoosier.com and On3. Well, we're made our way to the newest commit of for Indiana, Trevor Gibbs, tight end linebacker from Crown Point, 6'2", 220. Man, this kid, he might be the best overall talent in this class right now. He is phenomenal as a linebacker, making plays. He's got great ball sense and hands. And then you watch him as a tight end, split out, run routes, come attached, and just annihilating kids, blocking. And I don't know if it's up yet. I did compete. I did have it done. So it may be up on the site already, my breakdown of him, but go watch it. This kid, I'm telling you, this kid was a huge get for Indiana. And I'm just going to say it right now. He fits a Zach Horton type of mold in the sense of what he's able to do. Attached, unattached, route runner, block in space, all those things. And then being a linebacker, he could go out and be the next best thing as a linebacker in this recruiting class as well. But Trevor Gibbs, another big get, beat a lot of Big Ten teams for him. Your thoughts on Trevor?
Yeah, he's just massive. His On3 profile says 6'2", 220, but he's grown even more over the last couple of months. He's up to like 6'4", 235. He is just massive. He plays linebacker. He plays tight end as well. And I think what stands out to me about Gibbs is we've talked about a lot of guys and how they've had good production throughout their Indiana high school careers or throughout their high school careers in general. but Gibbs has matched that production. He's put up fantastic numbers, but his team wins too. And I think that's something that is a little bit overlooked and often invaluable. He's part of a winning culture at Crown Point. This was the Class 4A state runner-up this past season, this last fall, Crown Point was. And this was a team that was led by Gibbs on their way to being the runner-ups in the Class 4A state championship game. He had over 60 tackles, had 3 interceptions, a forced fumble, 2, but 600 yards receiving, 9 touchdowns. He's going to come in and play tight end. But what I think is even more important is he's coming from that winning culture. You want guys that have that production, but you want guys that are winners too. And what stands out to me about Gibbs is that he is a winner. Everywhere he's gone throughout his high school career at Crown Point, he is a winner. And I think that he can bring that type of mentality, that type of mindset to Indiana as well, because, again, he is massive. 6'4", around 235 pounds, a top 60-ish ranked recruit for his position in the entire country. Gibbs is massive. He brings not only the proven production, which is good. We've talked a lot about a lot of Indiana's recruits having that type of production at the high school level, and we know Coach Shannon loves production and loves that over talent in a lot of instances. But you can't overstate how important a guy coming from a winning culture and coming from a culture like Crown Point has. He did his recruitment announcement at his high school and had hundreds of guys and hundreds of people come out to watch his commitment announcement the other night to commit to Indiana. So I think that coming from that type of culture and that type of program from Crown Point can really help instill that kind of mindset and mentality in other guys, not only within the recruiting class, but within the team as well. And I think that's what Gibbs can bring.
Physically speaking, he's ready to play at the Big Ten level. And I do think he is a freshman possibility to get on the field when he steps on campus, even if it's in a backup role, because of like you just said, his physical numbers are crazy. And when you watch him play, it's like, wow, this kid is really good. And hopefully we can keep hiding him to like all these guys and get him to December, because as we know, these are just verbals and things could change. And while they've committed to Indiana right now, that doesn't mean the recruitment of them stops, and they will have to continue to recruit these kids throughout the rest of the year up until December, when they can finally make it official and sign on the dotted line. One kid that I think sometimes gets forgotten in this group of kids, because they're at 8 now, and the first one to make his true commitment known to Indiana was Samuel Simpson out of River Falls, Wisconsin, out of the Bobstead area. Good old Wisconsin boy, 6'4", 275, and pretty impressive for a big man. Moves well, probably needs to get a little stronger. But again, these guys are going into their senior year, so he's going to have some gains here heading into next season, their senior season. But this kid, I think, was a nice pickup for Coach Bobstead and the offensive line.
Yeah, and you kind of can see the potential with Simpson, 6'4", 275 as it stands right now. But again, a lot of room to kind of fill out and grow size-wise. And again, along the offensive line, you're probably not expecting guys to come in and start as freshmen, maybe not even as sophomores either. So this is a guy, by the time he's a junior, by the time he's a senior, he'll be more seasoned, he'll be bigger, he'll have put on that muscle. But again, it goes back to show you this is real. Indiana football is real. They're competing against the top schools. I mean, Iowa is 200 miles from him. So is Wisconsin. He's right in the back door of both the University of Wisconsin and the University of Iowa. And Indiana still went in and got him. And I think it goes to show the power of Indiana's recruitment and what they can do with Kurt Snetti and with his assistant coaches and with his staff. Again, we talked about it with Olinger, how Indiana went into Columbus and got a big recruit there. This is a guy that is from Wisconsin, had offers and was recruited hard by Iowa, had an offer and was recruited hard by Wisconsin too. Those are two programs that have a history of turning out fantastic linemen, yet he decides to come to Indiana to be part of what the Hoosiers are building. I think, again, he's got potential. You're probably not going to see him out on the field much as a freshman or a sophomore. By the time he's a junior or a senior, Indiana's going to hope that he can be a contributor, probably on the interior of the offensive line.
Yeah, Coach. Yeah, he's a stud. He is a kid that I was thoroughly impressed of his tape. And again, although it's highlights, I mean, you still can get a sense of the kid's ability, even on a highlight tape that they put together.
And real quick,
For
the thing with Gibbs is you mentioned you can see it's a highlight tape, yes, but you can just see the difference in size between. I mean, he's playing at the 4A level. Like these are other talented guys, other big guys, but he's still just the biggest guy out on the
yeah,
football field anytime he steps out there. And another thing with Gibbs, I forgot to add, you look at Indiana's tight end room, they're going to graduate 3 tight ends. Indiana is after this season. So you look at the
yeah,
tight end room, who will be returning in 2026? It'll be 2 guys that'll be true freshmen this upcoming season, and Blake Theory and Andrew Barker. So it's going to be a young tight end room for Indiana when Gibbs finally steps on campus. So I think he'll have an opportunity, as you mentioned, to kind of play his way into a role and some playing time right away, just given his sheer size at that position.
no question. And I do think he is one of those freshmen that can't come in if he grasps things really well, can find himself in a position of playing time early on as a freshman. Well, with recruiting still ongoing and we're starting to, get some of these commitments, as nowadays kids like to get it all wrapped up before the season really kicks off in August. So you've really got a couple more months here. Before that all comes to fruition for a lot of these kids. Where do you think, where are some targets that Indiana right now is really pushing to get a kid's commitment?
There's a handful of guys. There's a lot of guys. Indiana's kind of been in on a lot of guys as of late, especially in the 2026 class. The guy that stands out to me is a guy like Damon Ferguson. He's a running back. He's a 4-star. He's really, really talented out of Baltimore, Maryland. He's 5'11", around 180 pounds, rushed for 16 touchdowns. He's got teams like Ohio State, North Carolina, Michigan State in that kind of top 10-ish of him. But
And he
he
just
loves
visited,
Indiana.
right? He was just on campus
He
a
did.
week ago, right? Okay.
Yep, late April he visited, and Indiana would appear to be the front runner for Ferguson right now. Again, there's anything can change in recruitment these days. Of course, these guys aren't officially signed until National Signing Day later in December. But Ferguson is a guy that I would keep an eye on at running back. You mentioned the kid from Fort Wayne, Guilford, Jaquaden Guilford. He's a top guy to watch, the number 3 ranked recruit in the state of Indiana out wide. He's got a lot of talent. He's athletic. He is one of those types of guys where you can throw it up to him. He's only like 6'2", I believe, but you can throw it up to him and he's going to go get that ball. He can create separation as well. Guilford is the guy that I would watch to kind of put on
Right.
commitment watch for Indiana fans out of the 2026 class. Another couple of guys. There's a defensive lineman out of Center Grove. Kobe Cherry is another guy. He's massive too, 6'4", around 240. Kobe Cherry, of course, coming from Center Grove, we talked about the importance of coming from winning programs. If you're looking for a winning high school football program in the state of Indiana, look no further than Center Grove. And I think Cherry really loves Indiana. He was on campus last year for the Nebraska game, and he came away just raving about the culture. Of course, that was a dominant win for Indiana over Nebraska. But those are 3 guys that I would probably
Yeah.
highlight out of the 2026 class. If you're looking for guys who might be next, I'd point to those 3 guys.
Yeah, and Cherry's the brother of Tyler Cherry, the quarterback for Indiana, that unfortunately is going to miss this season due to the knee injury. And I hate that for the kid because you lose a year of development. And but it's good to see that he's still around the program in a quote unquote student coaching manner at this point in time. Well, Zach, I really appreciate you coming on again to fill us in on all things recruiting. Again, you can catch all of Zach's articles and stuff on thehoosier.com, and he does a great job of getting you all the information as it pertains to the possible newest commits, as we heard the 3 names here tonight that may be making some type of decision in the near future. So get over there, get that subscription, and take a look at Zach's writing and stuff. But Zach, appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thanks so much for having me. Always happy to be here.
Well, that was Zach Browning from thehoosier.com. I appreciate him coming on this evening as we chug along here in the month of May. Hard to believe that we're getting ready for Mother's Day. And then, of course, the end of the month, the Indianapolis 500 that everybody enjoys that weekend of May as the track is already open and things are rocking and rolling down there in Indy right now. A couple of things here that I saw today that, first and foremost is this NCAA versus the House settlement that we are waiting the judge's approval. NCAA, the lawyers did file another brief and basically gave in to the request of the judge on grandfathering in the walk-ons that were a part of a program this past year in order to keep the numbers the same. And then as the years go by, they'll eventually get to the true number of 105. So you probably had 20 additional kids that were a part of the program last year. Now, whether they have left and gone somewhere else or still at Indiana per se, they will be able to come back. And I think that is a win in the sense that it gives you more bodies on your roster, especially for practice purposes and even depth purposes in that regard. So that was one thing that was the big hiccup that the judge wanted to see was this grandfathering in of the roster sizes of all these schools. And it's just not in the sport of football. Walk-ons play a huge part in other sports where they have limited scholarships. So it was very important for this to be, given into so that we can move forward, because this does not go to, the NCAA does not want this to go to a lawsuit. They lose and everything gets blown up. But the key component is that we're awaiting that sign off, which I'm anticipating any time now. And at that point, when that is officially signed off, we'll get more clarity on everything from A to Z that will be implemented moving forward as it pertains to NIL, as it pertains to the broadcast rights and the money coming back for that to be distributed amongst the athletes in the program. I know the football program is probably going to get anywhere from 75 to 80% of that money, not just at Indiana, but other institutions as well, is what I've been hearing all along. And so I do think the sooner they can get that cleaned up, the better, so that everything can move forward. And also the clearinghouse that the NCAA has hired Deloitte as being that clearinghouse for all this NIL stuff. Any kid that has a NIL deal of $600 or more has to go through the clearinghouse for them to approve it. And I don't know how that all will work, but we'll find out. And as soon as we do, we'll give you all that information. But we're moving forward, hopefully here with the NCAA settlement. I know that there's been some top 25 polls that have come out of late. And, even though it's too early, these are the polls that in some way or another have a way of shaping the narrative in the NCAA as it pertains to those type of things here. Let's see here. I think this is the one I want. Is this the one? Yeah. This was on 3 that really came from ESPN as it pertains. But right now, with this, they have got Penn State as the number 1 ranked team, and perfectly understood why. Drew Aller and what they have coming back on defense, as well as some pickups that they made at wide receiver. Penn State really needed wide receivers in their skill room, and they did pick up some of those kids. The King Mack kid out of Alabama, as well as the kid out of USC. So they picked up about 4 or 5 of these wide receivers that they did. Of course, they added Jim Knowles as their new defensive coordinator. Number 2, they got Clemson. I kind of scratched my head with that one. Klubnik is back, and they've got some talented kids there. They had them at 2. They had Texas at 3. Arch Manning is primed to take over at the quarterback position, probably the most hyped recruit player you can think of that is going into this season with a ton of pressure on his shoulders because of not just his name, but the buildup for him being the guy. And quite honestly, push Quinn Ewers into the draft because of them wanting to move forward with Arch. So it'll be interesting to see how Arch does this year for Texas. They come in at an early 3. Of course, Georgia comes in at number 4, and you can understand why they're powerhouse. Then the Buckeyes. Surprising they're at 5, but they did lose quite a bit of bodies up front, but they've got probably 2 of the best players in the nation with Jeremiah Smith and on offense, and Caleb Downs back in their secondary. So those 2 guys are phenomenal players. And then they picked up the Claire kid from Purdue at tight end, which I think was a big pickup for them. LSU at 6. We all know that Brian Kelly will always have the talent. It's just whether or not they can put it all together. But they got Nussmeier back, the quarterback that's returning. So there's always a possibility there. And then they picked up some prominent kids at the portal as well. Notre Dame, interesting. They've got them at 7. They got Love back and some others, but who's going to be their starting quarterback? That's going to be the biggest question mark for Notre Dame. It seems to be that it's going to be Carr. But I have not seen anything officially on that yet, and probably will not. But they picked up some big kids in the portal. They got, the Fields kid from Virginia, who's a pretty good player. Devontae Smith from Alabama as well. So Notre Dame looks to be ready to reload. Oregon, a team that Indiana will play on the road this year. Again, they're going to have a new quarterback. They think it looks like it's Dante Moore is going to be replacing Dylan Gabriel. He is a transfer from UCLA. And then, of course, they picked up some pretty good talent in the portal. The Mekhi Hughes from Tulane is a legit running back. And then you can see they got the Dylan Thyman kid from Purdue, the safety. And that kid is a ball player. I would have hoped and wished that he would have stayed in Indiana because he is a ball player. So those are huge pickups for Oregon. Alabama at 9, BYU at 10. So Indiana right now is not in the top 10 in the country as you look at it. When you look at the rest, Illinois at number 11, definitely a team that will probably crack the top 10 in a lot of polls. What they have coming back, they got Altmaier back, the quarterback. He's a really good player. They had a great year last year, but Indiana overshadowed that by the way they were playing. Then you got Arizona State, as you can see as you go on there, but Indiana is right down there at number 17 in the country. And right, wrong, or indifferent, that's not a bad spot for Indiana to be. Again, they've got to prove it year in, year out. They lost a lot of kids. They lost their top quarterback. Now we know that we think we've got the replacement in Mendoza, but again, Indiana is not a household name, or not known as a household name quite yet. But being at 17 as early as it is a pretty good spot for Indiana to be at. They are going to face a more daunting schedule. There's no question about that. They got to play Oregon and Penn State. And that there's a stretch where they go Illinois, Iowa, and then out to Oregon. And they have Illinois at home. So that game is the kickoff for the Big Ten season. So as you can see, they're going to be right in the thick of things from the day one. They say go, and it's going to be a difficult task for them, and we'll be able to watch and see it all develop in front of us, because I do think they have a chance to do some of the same things they did a year ago if things fly right for them and they, stay injury free. Yeah, better starting point than last year. That's agreeable. And then Robert, I heard that you said that your mom is going to be 91. Well, a early happy birthday to your mom, as well as wishing her a happy Mother's Day as well. But Indiana in a better spot and ready to take force on what's going on right now. We talked about what Indiana's doing now in the recruiting game. Big month of June for them. They'll have their on-campus Coach Signetti's football camps where they will start getting a lot of the talent from the 27 class, the 28 class, and even some of the 26 class that they may still be looking at on their campus in the month of June. So that will be a huge month of recruiting for them. And then they'll take a couple weeks off in the summer of the month of July before they get right back in to get prepared for the 2025 season. Well, I appreciate you being here with me tonight on the Hoosier Tailgate. We'll catch you again down the road as we get back to it on next Thursday night at 7:30. We'll have the information up. You can always catch me every Thursday morning on the Jim Coyle Show on his radio/podcast on YouTube. You can find it there. So by all means, you want to hit up Jimmy on the weekdays as well. He does a great job. And of course, we talked to Zach Browning tonight and thanking him for coming on. Well, I'm the Coach Shannon Griffith. Until next time, this has been the Hoosier Football Tailgate right here on thehoosier.com. Good night, everybody.
Hoosier Nation. Go to thehoosier.com and take advantage of the 50% off for the first month. Then 50% off on the first year of your subscription. You will get wall-to-wall coverage of the Indiana Hoosiers from Alec Lasley, Zach Browning, and the Coach Shannon Griffith on the Hoosier Football Tailgate, all on the Hoosier. Come